We'll get started in just a few minutes, but if you'll see in front of you, there are some quizzes. What I would like for you to do is to complete those. Don't put your name on them. You don't have to worry about them being graded. We're just going to review the answers at the end of the class. I'm a training manager and I've been here since October. So I'm a fairly new employee, so this is letting me to get to know all the city departments. I came from the University of Tennessee and I did training like this for all 345 cities. But prior to that, I worked for the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration, where I was over the budgets for the judicial agencies, the correctional agencies, and the Department of Safety. So that's a little bit about what I do. Today, and for the city of Murfreesboro, what I do is I deliver classes like this, work with the departments in topics that they may need, or I develop curriculum for topics we're going to need in the future. Why do you think we're having a class on harassment and discrimination? A need has been identified. That's a very good way of saying it. Also, it doesn't hurt to kind of sharpen our skills in what we know and how we handle things. Just like I have to sharpen my skills with a computer all the time because things change. Is there a typo in this? I'm not going to train you in how to harass and discriminate. It's an awareness class. So I saw some things that were sent out, discrimination and harassment training. We're not training you how to do that. We're hopefully training you in how to be aware of it and how not to do it. Some of the terms that we're going to be talking about is unlawful discrimination. It's unlawful for an employer to use discrimination, whether to refuse to hire or discharge an individual or discriminate them with respect to protected groups. And the protected groups are race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, and genetic information. If you didn't know, if you're 40 or above, you're in a protected class now. So that's either a good thing or a bad thing. Harassment, it's unwelcome conduct that's ongoing and pervasive, and it also has to be towards a protected class, which is again race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, genetic information. At the bottom it says this is not to be confused with poor work behavior. You may feel like your supervisor is harassing you, but if you're taking a 2-hour lunch, you come in late for work, you're not doing your job, that's not harassment, that's just work management. Inharmonious workplace environment. It's part of our policy guidelines, and notably on the last line, an employee's work behavior and work attitude shall comply to commonly accepted standards. What do you think a commonly accepted standard is for work behavior? Yeah, that's all it is, just courtesy. Be nice to people. When they, or when you were in school, play well with others. That's basically all it is. And that's part of our policy is try to get along, and there is no employee right to progressive disciplinary procedure also as attached to that, but there are forms of disciplinary action for the employee. Some of the policies we're going to be talking about, part of the policy prohibits discrimination, race, color, sex, gender, marital status, pregnancy, religion, national origin, protected activity, age, and disability. There's another one added here, protected activity. Protected activity is anything that you have a legal right to do, whether you're claiming workers' comp, filing a grievance, or filing a complaint. You cannot be prosecuted or retaliated against for filing a complaint that you have a legal right to do. Another policy is against harassment. Profanity can be a form of harassment to some employees that are offended by it. Some employees don't like foul language in the workplace. Some don't mind it, but you have to be aware that the people you're talking to can be offended by it, and you need to be cognizant of that fact. Here again, policy prohibits racial, ethnic, sexual jokes, slurs, symbols, drawings, cartoons, gestures, spoken, written, are prohibited while on the job or in city uniform. This policy, again, is protected by law, and it's race, color, religion, gender, national origin, age, or disability. Think about this. Is it humorous to the person the joke is about? It all depends on what kind of sense of humor the person has that you're joking about, what kind of sense of humor you have. Even with me, I'm a big supporter of UT. Sometimes the jokes about our football team can be a little bit too much. All I just say is that's enough, you know, we don't need to go any further with it, and they usually stop the jokes, but hopefully it'll get better. Social media. Again, this is about race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, sex, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or medical condition. The thing about the social media policy is, and I know everybody has freedom of speech, and it shouldn't affect your Facebook page, but on the other hand, if you're representing yourself as a City of Murfreesboro employee, there's no doubt that's who you're employed by and that's who you're representing. This is where the social media policy can be troublesome for you. I'll give an example. It made the news. This has been quite a few years ago. There was a police officer in a city nearby that used his Facebook page to make racial slurs towards a certain group. The problem with this was that he was a police officer. He had pictures of him on his Facebook in his uniform. He had pictures of his police car. He said what city he was employed by, and that's how he got in trouble, because he was saying that he was a representative of that city, and he got in trouble because of that. If he had no mention of who he worked for, he had no mention of or no photos of him in uniform or in his car, there wouldn't have been an issue about it. So this is where the social media policy comes into play. Some examples of harassment. The harasser can be the victim's supervisor who works in another department, a co-worker, or a member of the public. Most people don't think about that. You can get harassed by the public, and I know that's never happened to any of you here, right? What do you do if you're harassed by the public? That's good advice if you're a Rover driver. But if someone in the public starts harassing you, what do you think you should do? Don't retaliate against them. Don't get into a fight with them. Don't come back at them with what they came back with you. But first thing I would say is tell your supervisor about it so they can be aware of that it's happening. But don't fight fire with fire. Also, the victim is not necessarily the person being harassed, but it can be anybody surrounding them. Harassment can be, or discrimination can be on your telephone, something you see that somebody goes by and sees it as well. It could be in a publication you're looking at that they may just be an observer of. And harassment does not require economic injury, demotion, raise, or termination. Lastly, there's no retaliation against those who make a complaint of discrimination or harassment. The reason why that phrase is there, and you'll see it repeatedly, is because Murfreesboro does not want this to happen, and they would rather you report it than for the policy, or excuse me, the activity to go on. The next term you may see in crime shows, quid pro quo. It's when terms of employment are based on something or something for something. Most of the times you think of it based on acceptance of sexual behavior or a suggestion or threat that rejection will result in adverse employment action. That can be a type of harassment. If someone says, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you, that's basically what quid pro quo means. On human resource practices, this especially applies if you're a supervisor. Are you treating everyone the same as far as employment practices? Given each employee has the same working practices, has the same good level of work, does everybody have the same opportunity to have the same work schedules, the same promotions, the same raises, things like that? You need to have everyone on the same playing field if they have the same qualifications. Again, another comment about jokes, comments, and slurs. But in order to be harassment, it has to be one of these protected groups, as well as discrimination. Also, jokes, comments, and slurs do not have to be verbal. How can you make a joke or a slur about someone and it not be verbal? Email is a way that it doesn't have to be verbal, texting, social media, and hostile workplace environment. Getting yelled at all day long could meet part of the test. However, if you're being yelled at, again, for bad work habits, that could be bad management practices, not a hostile workplace environment. And again, I want to stress, it has to be so pervasive that you cannot work there to be a hostile workplace. Some of the solutions, and these are pretty simple, but they're good solutions. You never look good trying to make someone else look bad. Just like the old adage, if you point the finger at somebody, you've got 4 fingers pointing back at yourself. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And if you feel comfortable and safe discussing it with the person that you think harassed you or discriminated against you, ask the person and see if that's what they intended. Some of the bad things that you may think are coming to you, an example would be by email. Email's hard to judge humor, it's hard to judge sarcasm, and you could say things you think are fine in an email, people can judge totally different. If you are a victim or if you've witnessed discrimination or harassment, in order for it to be a formal report, it has to be reported to the HR director, the equal employment officer, your department head, city attorney or assistant city attorney, or the city manager or assistant city manager. There is one title on there that's missing. Do you notice which title that is, besides the mayor? It's your supervisor. And the reason why that is because if it's your supervisor, they don't want you to have to report to your supervisor that you're being harassed by them. And you do not have to go through the chain of command to give a report of harassment or discrimination. Nobody wants it to continue, so that's why they've named so many people you can give a report to. Also, if you witness discrimination or harassment, these are some of the people you have to report to. The equal employment officer, I wanted to make a note here, is the assistant HR director, which is Chris Clausey. Remember, if you discuss an issue with a coworker, this is not reporting the incident. You have to submit a formal report. Also, if you talk to your supervisor, as a scenario, I have a friend, this is not reporting the accident. They won't know if it's you or if it's actually your friend. If possible, if you have offended someone or if they have offended you, talk to the person if you feel comfortable doing it. And one of the most important things here, we represent Murfreesboro in whatever we do, wherever we're seen, and wherever we are heard, be professional. Not everybody has something on their clothing that identifies them as a City of Murfreesboro employee, but we're still on the city time clock. We still have to be aware that people know that we work for the City of Murfreesboro. In our communications, we are seen as representing the city and what it approves. If you saw a city vehicle run, or several city vehicles run red lights, what would that show the public? That it's okay to do it. The workplace is a neutral, respectful zone. Whatever may seem appropriate outside the workplace may not be appropriate in the workplace, and we have to be mindful of that. If we have activities that we participate in outside the workplace, that's fine. But if the City of Murfreesboro does not support them, we need to leave them at home and abide what the rules are with the City of Murfreesboro. Again, there's no retaliation against those who make a complaint of discrimination or harassment. I'm just going to go over the answers to the quiz real quick. Examples of unwillful, illegal discrimination include comments about someone's religion. It is illegal to discriminate in any aspect of employment, including, the answer is all of the above. A type of sexual harassment is quid pro quo, or when your terms of employment are based on acceptance of sexual favors. Harassment comes in many forms, including sexual harassment. Harassment may include making jokes or comments regarding race, religion, or disability. Employees are not required to follow the chain of command in making a report or complaint of harassment or discrimination. True. If you complain about harassment, it is possible to lose your job for making the complaint. False. Who do you go to if you do not feel comfortable discussing the harassment with the individual committing the harassment? Contact the HR director, the Equal Employment Opportunity Officer, your department head, the city attorney or assistant city attorney, or the city manager or assistant city manager. Sexual harassment can occur only between members of the opposite sexes. False. If you are a victim or witness harassment or discrimination, contact the HR director, the Equal Employment Opportunity Officer, the department head, city attorney or assistant city attorney, or the city manager or assistant city manager. Number 11, for a harassment claim to be valid, the victim must have suffered concrete economic injury such as a loss of job or promotion. False. You have a duty to report discrimination and sexual harassment in a timely manner. True. Inappropriate body language is not considered harassment and can be overlooked. False. 14, federal law prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, gender, or national origin. True. It is the responsibility of all employees to cooperate fully and truthfully in any investigation of a report or complaint of harassment or discrimination. True. Harassing behaviors are those that could disrespect another person or group. True. Harassing behavior must be done in person. False. Racial, ethnic, and/or sexual jokes, slurs, symbols, drawings, cartoons, gestures, spoken or written are prohibited while on the job or in city uniform. True. Profanity can be a form of harassment to some employees who are offended by it. If they are constantly subjected to it, it can be considered harassment. True. That ends our class today on discrimination and harassment awareness. If you haven't signed the sign-in sheet, I would appreciate if you could do that. Thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.